Hey guys, it's Sean Bob back with a new video on the upcoming KMS patch, the Boss Reorganization Patch. I know there's a lot of MapleStory content creators who've already done a patch overview, but I think one of my biggest strengths in this game is understanding the general meta and being able to predict how some changes in the patch will lead to market changes. So hopefully I'll be able to explain my thoughts on this patch. I had one look at this patch and it's convinced me that it's going to be huge. I'm predicting that this will be the biggest meta changer we've seen in years, which is why I'm making this video, to explain how you should mentally prepare for this upcoming patch. This is also a fun video where I get to nerd out in merching. Firstly, this patch probably won't drop in GMS for another half a year or so. It hasn't even dropped in KMS yet, so you have plenty of time to digest these changes before it gets implemented. Also, I'm playing in GMS Bearer, so if I refer to prices, I'm quoting Bearer's auction house prices. Finally, this post comes from OrangeMushroom.net, and I'll link the website below for those who want to see the original, so credits to Max for this update summary. To start, we're getting a new weekly boss, and unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen this hyped up a lot already. I actually like this idea of revisiting an old nostalgic monster that represents MapleStory and turning him into a proper boss. Hopefully they do something similar for other monsters like OrangeMushrooms. Okay, this is the first question mark I see. Recently we've had the daily boss and elite boss cube controversy, because GMS just straight copied KMS's changes, but clearly our economy and player base is nowhere as strong as KMS, and therefore, those changes have been a complete failure in GMS. I'm wondering if the mezzo inflation they're raising here is going to be adjusted to the GMS market, but I'm just going to assume that we're getting a straight copy-paste from KMS. Anyways, this note states in KMS, intense power crystals are the biggest source of mezzo generation, and already this is probably different for us in GMS because of spawn enhancers like Frenzy Totem. We're able to achieve mezzo farming rates in the regular servers that are close to reboot server rates because we have spawn enhancers, and therefore I would not expect intense power crystals to be the biggest source of mezzo generation for us GMS regular server players. However, the full benefits from spawn enhancers and mezzo farming is probably going to be based from the mid to end game player base, and so for newer players, these intense power crystal changes might be felt a lot more. Some of these points are pretty interesting, but I won't dive too deep into them because we don't really know what kind of changes will be set anyways, but it'll be cool to see some changes here. This probability experience point right here is one that personally catches my eyes. Maybe a pity system would be nice. For example, if you fail like 100 master cubes from epic to unique, you're guaranteed to tier up on the 100th cube. That kind of change sounds pretty cool to me. Even if they nerf the tier up rate, I think most people would be content with that kind of change. But anyways, we'll have to see what kind of changes they make later on. Okay, this one's huge, and I think this has been hyped a lot. Red 2.0. Red patch was basically the only full Explorer revamp we've had in MapleStory, and with all these new classes appearing with flashier skills than before, Explorers have been left in the dust. So there's a lot of people expecting a full revamp of the Explorer classes with this notice. I have mixed feelings about this. There's definitely some Explorer classes that actually need a complete overhaul, and changes like iframes and binds are probably the most common features that we lack. But I feel like some of them already have a distinctive color like dual blades, so I'm a bit scared to see that they make unnecessary changes to certain classes. But again, we can only wait until this time comes. This one's really nice, especially for me. I've decided to make my free-to-play progression independent of parties until I reach a stage where I can join a black mage party. So adding easier versions of the bosses will allow solo players like me to get more mezzos from intense power crystals and soul shards. Great change in my opinion. This will probably also mean that souls in general will be a lot easier to get because there's more opportunities to get them. So I'm expecting prices to drop a bit after this patch gets implemented. You might want to sell your magnificent souls before this patch hits. Okay, I'm going to skip the specific details on the boss fight. You can read this in your own time. Oh, but this reward. This is huge. Currently in GMS non-reboot, we have quite a few options for the best insult rings. We have the Superior Golux Ring, Reinforced Golux Ring, Meister Ring, Gloner's Heart, Endless Terror, Kindness Treasure, and Bods. And those are all top contenders for the best insult rings. Realistically, for an average player, Bods and Endless Terrors are out of the question. We can also remove Gloner's Heart from this list because the Star Force system for that is really weird, and apparently the expected time to get 22 stars will be 5 years. Most of us will probably have quit by then. So we have these rings now. I believe Superior Golux Ring and Reinforced Golux Ring will still definitely be best in slot, so we can ignore those as well. Now we've condensed this list down to just 2 rings to compare this Slime's rings to. I think unless one is looking to absolutely min-max, it's a fair assumption to say the differences between these 3 rings are very small. So I'm going to assume that we have a choice of picking 2 out of the 3 rings. Of course, it will largely be dependent on the drop rate for this Slime's ring, but with Karna's treasure not being too hard to obtain from Princess No, I think this Slime's ring could be potentially seeded as a 4th best in slot ring for an average MapleStory player. Meister rings are expensive, not only because 22 star Meister rings are a best in slot for an average player, but also because people can use them to transfer hammer onto a superior Golux ring. With this Slime's ring potentially being able to replace the Meister ring, there could be a drop in the demand for Meister rings, which will lower the prices in the long run. Basically, I think Meister rings will be worth a lot less after this patch, so sell them before this patch hits. Okay, from what I hear, this is going to continue to widen the gap between early game players and end game players. Apparently, the price change will be related to the weekly boss clear rate. So if there's a lot of people clearing the bosses, then the intense power crystal price will go down, and vice versa. If nobody is clearing the bosses, then intense power crystals will go up in price. And yes, the prices for this week is based only on the last week's price, so the prices can keep going down by 3% every single day. Unless you're at an endgame point, you're going to be losing here. The daily boss intense power crystals are going to continually drop in price, while harder bosses like Black Mage will probably keep going up every week, because the change in price is inversely proportionate to the clear rate. The goal here is apparently to control meso inflation with this. I'm not a big fan of this change and hope they reconsider this, because it's not going to control meso inflation, it's just going to redistribute the wealth between different progression stage players, or in simple words, going to make the end game players even richer and limit the resources given to early game players, and it's not really going to solve their problem here. Okay, all these new rewards being added to the weekly bosses I should talk about, and how they affect the market. Spoiler, it's going to change the market a lot. Firstly, yes, flames are going to be more accessible than before, so just in general, flames will drop in price. Small EXP accumulation potions will now be a reward, meaning EXP accumulation potions will probably drop in price. It also means that junipers could drop in price as well, but I won't generally say that because junipers are also used for wealth acquisition potions, which aren't affected in this patch. Mulong's Medal of Honors will also drop in price. If only these medals here weren't tradable, then I could argue that Mulong's medals could actually even rise in price. Icogs will also drop in price, and so will all these other scrolls here, the accessory scroll, and all these other scrolls. Note here that the primal essence will drop in price, and that will also mean that Meister rings will drop in price as well, because you need primal essence to craft Meister rings. And that means from this patch, I'm probably just going to assume that Meister rings are going to tank a lot in price after this patch. Make sure to sell your Meister rings that you're not using. Alright, so everything I just named just then here, you probably want to sell before this patch hits, because I'm expecting the prices for those will all drop, which means you can pick those up after for a lower price. Okay, this is a huge question mark for me. This implies that cubes of any sort from KMS bosses won't drop cubes at all. I'm sure you already know about this, but this is a very different case to GMS. We literally just had a fight with Nexon about them removing cubes from daily bosses, so I'm really curious to see what they're intending on doing with this change. They might think that these changes above here could be enough to satisfy the masses and quietly get rid of the boss cubes, but speaking for the whole GMS player base, I don't think it'll be a popular decision at all. I'm planning on abusing the hell out of boss cubes in a new project, so I really hope they don't delete boss cubes, but I guess we can only wait and see. Also, if they're reducing the supply on occult cubes, then you can expect the prices on those to go up in the long run, so it might be worthwhile investing in some of these now while the prices are low. Okay, I guess Nexon doesn't want the drop rate for these items to go out of hand. This only implies that we'll see a constant number of the items proportionate to the number of parties per world clearing these bosses. If you're in a very populated server, then you can expect to see heaps of the boss rewards in the auction house. If you're in a very empty server, then you can expect to see very few of the boss rewards, and whether or not this is beneficial to you will depend on whether you're going to be a buyer or supplier here. Okay, this one is humongous. I don't want to start a panic buying rush here, but I'd buy any cheap Arcanes and sell any expensive Arcanes right now if I were you. Listen to my explanation. The fact that they're changing the Arcane drop from specific equips to the voucher equips means technically in the long run, every Arcane equip will be valued the same. The reason is, for example, if Arcane guns are 10 mil at the moment and Arcane fans are 4 mil at the moment, for the longest time nobody will redeem the Arcane guns from the vouchers. They'll all be too busy redeeming the fans and trying to undercut each other to make as much profit as they can. So the supply for Arcane fans will increase a lot, whereas the supply for Arcane guns will not increase by much. Over an extended period of time, prices for Arcane fans will go down due to undercutting, while prices for Arcane guns will go up because there is too much demand for them and not enough supply. Which means theoretically, the prices should equal in the long run. This argument can be applied to every arcane equip in general, which is why I'm recommending people to just buy cheap arcanes and sell any expensive arcanes right now. Because the way I see it, they're all going to be worth the same eventually. That's nice. Arcane armors are going to be even easier to get, so prices should go down. So sell them before this patch hits. That's also pretty nice for people wanting to get 22-star arcane armors. It'll be a lot more affordable. Weapons in general will go up in price on average because the drop rate will be lower. I'm not going to be bothered to go through the specific best in slot set effects, but yes, there will be some big change here. But I don't think it will be significant enough where you have to change your gear now and after the patch, but don't quote me on that. Not gonna lie, I have no idea what Mitch's rage is. That's a really nice quality of life changes for parties. This could be good or bad for you, depending on your playstyle. If you're doing daily bosses on more than 3 characters, it could be worse. But apparently this is only for 2.7% of players. But for most people, this is a good change. Why the hell are they removing regular weapons and armors from bosses? How am I going to feed my orange imps now? Okay, expect prices for orange imps and swift rakes to go up after this patch. I'm sure most people raising orange imps are feeding them with equips that drop from daily bosses. It's way too much effort feeding them one etc item at a time. Again, a redistribution of reward point funds. I'm not a fan of this either. They're nerfing the reward points on daily bosses and increasing it for weekly bosses. That will really reduce the reward point amount for starting players who can't clear the weekly bosses, so it's not a good change in my opinion. Literally confirms my previous point. This was a way for starting players to accumulate reward points, but it just seems they're trying to reduce the total reward points that you can obtain overall, as well as cucking new players. Oh wow, this is actually a great quality of life change. It'll be a lot easier managing buffs. This is actually really nice, especially for purely training purposes. It will definitely help for training Legion characters as well. You can also reset hyperstats whenever you want, so you can switch between this and the bossing stats. And complementing this new hyperstat, we have a preset system, which is great. But it will cost 2 mil every single time for you to do it, which isn't too much to be honest. Oh my gosh, finally, I've been waiting for this. People have been complaining that my inventory is always too disorganized, but it's because I'm not bothered fixing it every single day. I have better things to do than waste 30 minutes a day organizing my inventory. This will actually incentivize me to actually organize my inventory, so I love this feature. Oh yes, I've been waiting for this for ages. A Moras and Esfera party quest. Okay, this is going to increase the amount of Moras and Esfera symbols you can obtain every day, which means the symbol priority could change. Before, I would always say use the arcane symbol selectors on Moras and Esfera because you can only get 8 of them a day. But now, since you can get 14 of these each a day, it won't be as set in stone. I think if you don't have the damage to clear many stages on Dream Defender, it won't be a bad idea to grab Lost Line symbols with the arcane symbol selectors, but if you do, I think it's your call as to which symbol you prioritize with the selective arcane symbols. Oh my, the prices on back pets are going to become higher because they're getting buffed here. Okay, this one is huge. The best possible potential you can get on gloves are 3 lines on 8% crit damage. They're much better than percent stat. If you already had 2 or more lines of crit damage, you just got nerfed. They're saying here that they're going to combine the stats into 1 line, and then they're saying here that they're going to limit it to be 10%. So I believe what that means is that if you have 2 lines of crit damage, 8 plus 8 is 16, but we're capped at 10%. So that 16% will only be a 10% in the end. That's what I'm interpreting from this, but it might not be what I'm thinking about. But if that's the case, this is going to be pretty bad for people who already have 2 or more lines of crit damage. If it really is going to be the case where if they combine these, 8 plus 8, 16, and then limited to 10, you probably want to sell your double line crit gloves before this patch hits. But I'd wait for some clarification first. It seems really stupid to me that they're going to just completely devalue these gloves without any compensation. This is not going to be a popular change to the whales, and that's their source of revenue. Oh yes, boss damage is going to become easier to get. This is going to reduce the difficulty to get that line. So if you have equips with multiple boss damage lines, I would probably sell them before this patch rolls because it'll be easier to get them after. Nice. Okay, that's really good because Lost Line was really going to be linked to how much damage you have. So the fact that they're increasing the daily quest symbols means people are going to be less reliant on damage to max out the Lost Line symbols, which is great for newer players in my opinion. But yeah, that's it. That was a lot of information to digest, so I hope it was informative to you. The reason I made a video on this is because many of you were asking about the changes, and I definitely agree that this is going to be a huge change in the market. You have about half a year or 1 year to prepare for these changes, so hopefully you guys make use of it. But anyways, if you enjoyed this type of video, please do leave a comment saying so, and let me know any questions you have about my analysis. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you guys soon. Thanks!